Today we are going to be looking at creating some sort of background for our piece. And now just depending on what you're feeling, this could look totally different than some of the other previous assignment pieces that I've received in the past. But I'm going to give you best suggestions to pull things off of the internet and to implement them into your actual work. So at this point, we've already done our multiple values. We've created an outline. And we're ready to finish these things up by creating a background layer before we just kind of overlook everything and see if we want to add some extra details. So looking at my layers here, we've got quite a few things. We've got our outlines, we've got our multiple colorings for skins and all sorts of stuff. Still haven't worked on our eyes. That will come up next. But the one that we are going to change is the background. So what I'm going to do is I am going to start off, just in case, I'm going to create a blank new layer, and that's just going to be our background, title it background 2. And what I would suggest doing is going here online, we'll go to Google and we'll just type in pattern. And you could type in pattern or patterns, go over to the image section, and then we're going to scan through these. Now, before we start selecting any of these patterns and saying, oh, that's perfect, I like it, whatever, let's use this, we want to make sure that we're grabbing only large size patterns. So to make that a little bit easier, I'm going to go to Tools, Size, and Large. And there's so many different things to choose from. What I want to suggest is that you all stay away from things that are a little bit over the top and a little bit too noisy. So this would be a lot more than what's going on in my current piece. So I'd highly advise sticking to something that is very minimalistic, very basic, and feels very flat. Now, another thing you could do under the pattern is you could look up simple. You could also look up vector, because essentially that's going to give you some of the most minimalistic looking images possible. I'm just going to stick really, really basic, and I'm going to try using this one. So I'm going to, I know with Photoshop, usually you can just click and drag, but just in case, I'm going to save image, and it's going to go in that image folder that I've been working from. Goof. And we'll drop that in there. So if it is a little bit too distracting for you, you could go in here and turn off all of your layers so that you can see everything. For me, I'm just going to grab the move tool and kind of work around it because I do want to see what that looks like while I'm editing. So I'm going to take this piece here, and it doesn't fit, right? It's too small. I'm going to do a couple of things. I could stretch this out like so, but I don't want to do that. What I want to do is I actually want to rotate this first. So if you're using Photopea, you'll probably want to select the transform controls and then rotate those. If you hold shift, it should lock them into place. Those of us that are using Photoshop, instead of bringing up those transform controls, you can hit Control T on a Windows computer and Command T on a Mac. And I'm just going to rotate that there so it's vertical for me. And then I'm going to stretch this out. Okay. And I'm going to hit the check mark once I'm done. If you're using the transform controls, it may have a check mark as well. And when you are all finished, you can click that and it will turn them off. Now, so far, I still have a little bit of lip there. There we go. That's better. And I'm going to move this around just to kind of see what looks best. Does it look better if it's over here, if it's over here? I'm kind of liking this exactly where it is. Now, we're going to go in, and this little thumbnail here, which I believe is just a square on Photopea, I'm going to right click and we're going to find rasterize or rasterize layer. Okay, on Photopea, I think it just says rasterize. And we could do something really simple here. We could go in and change our blend mode, and this could be potentially our final step. We could say, you know, I actually just like this as an overlay that looks really great, or a screen that looks really good as well. But what I would like to see is a little bit more interest in your piece. So even if I choose to do overlay here, we've also got some student examples where we're seeing something like a gradient. And in order to see those gradients appear, okay, we've got to do a little bit more work. So let's go in and we are going to start a blank new layer. All right. So we've got our blank new layer here, and this is going to be my gradient, just so that I know that's what it is. Your gradient is probably located under your paint bucket, or it may just be stuck up there up top. And we can choose to change the style of gradient that we have. What I want is just to have like a pretty plain looking gradient where it goes from one color to the next. In Photoshop, they've changed it this last year to where the gradients look a little bit different whenever you do the drop-down menu. I believe in Photopea, it will have some different selections that you can go ahead and grab. For Photoshop, they've started kind of like putting things together in these little boxes and whatnot. I'm just going to choose one of these presets. And if you wanted to create your own, you could click on those gradients, and if you highlight any of these little swatches, you can change the color associated with it. And you would just hit OK. I like this blue and violet kind of color. I think that looks really nice. It's going to work pretty well with everything. So I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to bring, let's see how it looks if I kind of grab it from the edge there and go down. That doesn't look too bad. I'm going to hit Control Z or Command Z and go backwards a little bit and see how that looks. There we go. Okay, great. Now, again, there are more options for us here. We could go into our blend modes again and start picking through those. That would be our easiest transformation, which some of these are looking really, really cool. Overlay looks great. Even this vivid light looks really cool, or hard light. We should work smarter, not harder, right? Even subtract changes the whole dynamic of my image and makes that look really, really interesting. But I'm going to stick with something that's still on that lighter color of blue. And I'm going to choose hard light here. Now, what else is really interesting is we can change our opacities, and it will also affect the way that this is appearing. Now, if you are starting to see change between maybe more of your subject, like if your actual picture is starting to be affected, look at your layers and make sure that all of these background adjustments that you're creating are below your actual paintings, okay? So very important that everything here stays below. We could do one last thing. If we wanted to attach only this gradient to our pattern here, we could create what's called a clipping mask. And in order to do that, if you are on Photoshop and you're using a Windows computer, I believe it is the Alt button. Hold the Alt button down and then click here, and those will attach each other with that little arrow key, and then you'll see it's outlined like that. If you're on a Macintosh computer, you will hold the Option key and then click. And if you are on Photopea, I believe it is the Alt key, and then you're clicking down. You may also be able to right click and then say create clipping mask? Yes, because if I right click, I can release, which is kind of nice. So if we right click in this space, you can also scroll down and say create clipping mask, and that will attach those two together, which gives us a totally different appearance than it did vice versa. So I'm actually going to remove my clipping mask because I don't think it looks as good with that. I really like this blue hard light kind of look. I am going to bring that blue down just a little bit though. Kind of let that pink shine through. And there we go. Okay. Likewise, if you wanted to take your pattern and bring your pattern's color down, you could lighten that pattern up by changing the opacity on that layer as well. You can see it's very starch, it's very in your face here, and just a couple of seconds by pulling that opacity down, it now begins to recede into the background. So play around with that, have some fun. If you don't like the piece that you've made here, you can always take that out and you can go to the internet and grab a new one and try a new pattern and see how that looks for your piece. Good luck, and let me know if you all have questions. Make sure at the end of this assignment that you are saving it, and when you go to save, I want a JPEG from you all, please. And if you are on Photopea, it should be file and export as JPEG. All right. Make sure though that you also save this work as that PSD file, since the Photoshop or PSD files are very important for us to keep working on this until the very end. And we are so close. We're going to start working on the eyes and some extra little details to make this pop and be totally complete.